Hey, good morning. Welcome to church. Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. We're so glad that you're joining us today. I hope someone's doing something special for you. Why don't you get ready to worship, get ready to sing. Not just the mothers, everybody get ready to sing, especially the children, especially my children. Waking up from the longest night, fixing my eyes on a new horizon. Joy before me, leave the past behind. There's no turning back, there's no turning back. And boldly I'll run into your presence, faith like a child, known and protected here in your arms. My shame is unraveling, unraveling. You make me fearless, fearless. You hold my heart out of the dark, fearless, fearless. Finally free, your spirit makes me fearless. I was living underneath gray skies. Now I'm dancing in the light of heaven. Grace has found me, brought me back to life. There's no turning back, there's no turning back. And boldly I'll run into your presence, faith like a child, known and protected here in your arms. My shame is unraveling, unraveling. You make me fearless, fearless. You hold my heart out of the dark, fearless, fearless. Finally free, your spirit makes me fearless. I'm alive to praise you. I was made to love you. I'm alive to praise you. There's no turning back, there's no turning back. I'm alive to praise you. I was made to love you. I'm alive to praise you. There's no turning back, there's no turning back. Fearless, fearless. You hold my heart out of the dark, fearless, fearless. Finally free, your spirit makes me fearless, fearless. You hold my heart out of the dark, fearless, fearless. Finally free, your spirit makes me fearless, 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 fearless. Yeah. God, we thank you for your presence. We thank you, God, that you're filling homes, that you're filling lives right now, God. We thank you that your spirit wants to move. God, we thank you that nothing is impossible for you. God, this morning or whenever people are watching, Lord, we're believing for hope. We're believing for changes. God, we're believing for breakthrough. We're believing for healing. God, we thank you that you are God, that nothing is impossible. And we worship you. We lift you up. Worthy, worthy. Oh, nothing like you, Lord. And I search the world desire is now satisfied here in your love. Let's sing it out. Oh, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing better than you. There's nothing. Nothing is better than you. 'Cause I'm not afraid to show you my weakness. My failures are first. You've seen them all and you still call me friend. 'Cause the God of the mountain is the God of the valley. There's not a place your mercy and grace won't find me again. Oh, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing better than you. There's nothing. Nothing is better than you. Oh, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing better than you. There's nothing. Nothing is better than you. Nothing is better. Nothing is better than you. Nothing is better than you, Lord. Oh, oh. Nothing is better than you, Lord. You turn mourning to dancing. You give beauty for ashes. You turn shame into glory. You're the only one who can. You turn mourning to dancing. You give beauty for ashes. You turn shame into glory. You're the only one who can. You turn graves into gardens. You turn bones into armies. You turn seas into highways. You're the only one who can. You're the only one who can. Oh, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing better than you. There's nothing. Nothing is better than you. Oh, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing better than you. There's nothing. 'Cause nothing is better than you. Oh, we believe. We believe. Nothing is better than you, Lord. Nothing is better than you. Oh, oh, it's all for you, oh God. You change it all. You change it all. You bring life. You bring hope. You bring peace. Jesus, Jesus. Oh, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing better than you. There's nothing. Nothing is better than you. Sing it one more time. Oh, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing better than you. There's nothing. 'Cause nothing is better than you. Nothing but you. Nothing but you, Lord. Nothing but you, God. In the morning you sing over me, and I receive your mercy. Your faithfulness is clear to see. It's constant every day. In the morning, in the morning you sing over me. We receive, I receive your mercy. Your faithfulness is clear to see. It's constant every day. Every breath I breathe, an invitation to believe you are creating something good. Though the season doesn't tell my story, I know you'll move mountains for me. You're just that good, so I'll give thanks to God when I don't have enough, 'cause He's more than enough, and He knows what I need, so I'll give thanks to God when I don't have enough, 'cause He's more than enough, and He knows what I need. Come on, sing it out. In the silence I choose to believe. We believe you're working in the waiting. Though the future isn't clear to me, I trust you anyway. Every breath I breathe, an invitation to believe you are creating something good. Though this season doesn't tell my story, I know you'll move mountains for me. You're just that good, so I'll give thanks to God when I don't have enough, 'cause He's more than enough, and He knows what I need, so I'll give thanks to God when I heart this morning. He knows what we need. Before you even ask him, he knows what you need. Oh, you know, you know, you know. What do I worry? What do I worry? What do I worry? God knows what I need. What do I worry? What do I worry? What do I worry? God knows what I need. What do I worry? What do I worry? What do I worry? God knows what I need. What do I worry? What do I worry? What do I worry? God knows what I need. So I'll give thanks to God when I don't have enough, 'cause he's more than enough, and he knows what I need. So I'll give thanks to God when I don't have enough, 'cause he's more than enough, and he knows what I need. Every season, every time, he knows, he knows, he knows. God's not worried. God's not worried. God's not worried. He knows what you need. God's not worried. God's not worried. God's not worried. He knows what you need. God's not worried. He's not worried. He knows how to fill your need. He knows how to bring what you need. Yeah, yeah. Oh, what do I worry? What do I worry? What do I worry? God knows what I need. What do I worry? What do I worry? What do I worry? God knows what I need. God knows.
Hey, everybody. How good is that? Happy Mother's Day.
Yes, happy Mother's Day.
Happy Mother's
all you
Day, all the
ladies.
moms out there. Shout out to my wife, Pastor Kim. Happy Mother's Day. My mom, I don't know if you're watching, Mom, but happy Mother's Day. My two daughters, Johanna and Jessica. Jessica's behind me. My two daughter-in-laws, Kimberly and Sarah. Happy Mother's Day to all of you. So very, very privileged to be able to call all of you mothers. That's cool. So
Yeah.
that's awesome. Hey, we're going to say thanks to the band. We want to talk about mothers today, don't we?
Imagine
So we're gonna
that,
say-
Mother's Day, and we're going to talk about mothers.
Yeah, imagine that. Thanks, band.
Thanks,
Here in
guys.
Revelstoke again. Glad to have the band here in Revelstoke and be able to do this. So yeah, we want to talk about mothers and motherhood, and thought this would be a good time to do
Do you
that.
have questions about motherhood?
Do I
Is
have
that it?
questions
Yes,
about
I was just
motherhood?
wondering.
I don't know motherhood very directly.
Not intimately at all, I wouldn't think. No.
I mean, I've got some observations about motherhood,
Yeah.
but
it's all theory. It's all theory. It's not.
It's 100% theory. It's not anything but theory.
Yeah.
100%. But you're the expert.
Am I?
Well,
Okay.
we'll say you're the expert. You're the expert. I'm sure one of our
I like that
grandkids.
there's a few years, since I had little ones that, I've got some, some history and not not having little ones right now, but to see the fruit of them grown up a little bit.
It's interesting, with being an expert, the farther you get away from the actual fact, the more likely you're willing to be an expert. Actually, I don't think that's true. I think
I was going to say,
when
I'm
you're,
not sure that's...
I think the only time you're an expert is before you've actually done anything.
Yeah, then you've got all this wonderful theory, when I have kids, they'll never do that. When I get married, this is never going to happen, which you can be 100% sure that's exactly what will happen, is the very thing you say won't happen.
I kind of feel like we're not old enough yet to have any expertise on anything to do with parenting or anything.
I just think
yet.
it's risky. I just think to say that you have, that you know what to do in every situation, because there's always such... some things are just so subjective, right? And motherhood tends to have a little bit of an element of that will, what you've seen, what you've grown up with, the environment that you've come from plays such a big part in it. And so the things that you feel are absolutes or rights and wrongs, they can feel very different from person to person.
Well, in parenting styles, like mothering styles.
Exactly. I thought it was great when we had the Talking Taboo series, and the very first couple that we had on there talking about marriage and divorce. They talked, what's her name again?
Audrey.
Audrey, right. When Audrey talked about the Bible really refers a lot to not so much about what's right and wrong, but about the foolish and the wise.
Yeah, wisdom.
And it's more about wisdom. And I think that as I've aged, I have I've looked back on some of parenting, motherhood, and seen some wise decisions that I see the fruit of in my children and in our lives, and not necessarily knowing that those were wise decisions. I also look back and recognize some foolish decisions that I chose even when I knew maybe that they were foolish, and just trusting that really God's is willing to actually impart that wisdom to you, that it's not always about those absolute rights and wrongs sometimes.
Yeah, that's true with parenting, and especially today, talking about mothers. But Mother's Day is actually kind of a really sort of a difficult day for a lot of people too.
Absolutely. I think for me, I would think, as I think of motherhood and being a mother and having mothers, I
said having mothers.
Mothers, yeah, I have more than one, so I even brought tissues with me in case that provokes some thoughts. But it's a very emotional time for me. I would say it's been the greatest joy of my life, besides being married to you.
Oh, there you go. Oh.
Yeah, that's been pretty good too.
There's a reward in heaven for you for that.
Yeah, exactly. But it's also probably been the most painful thing in my life. Not the majority of that being having children, but having had a mother that I'm estranged from, as well as a mother that gave me birth, but I really didn't grow up knowing her, still not really knowing her.
You've got a stepmom and a biological mom, and the relationships there are all very, very different.
It's very, and really wanting to be a woman of God that honors my mother, because more than anything, I want, I know that what you give is what you receive, and not just for what I'm going to receive as honor from my children and grandchildren, but I was very aware of the need to be honoring. I never really ever heard my father talk about it, but he demonstrated honor towards the woman who was my mother. He never once ever said anything
like your biological mother.
She was my mother till I was 2, and then as a result of divorce, I went to live with my dad and really never saw my mother, other than I could count on one hand how many times I saw her during my childhood. Well, actually, probably even till now. Well, yeah, probably. I would say, you've only met her once, I believe, and that was about 5 years ago.
Something like that. Yeah.
But he never once, when I thought about it, and he never really ever said anything bad about her. I knew there was negative feelings.
And that would be his ex-wife.
His ex-wife, yeah. He wouldn't really, I never really knew why the marriage broke down, but I did hear stories, but never from him. And it's only after the fact that I realized that actually I'm not really sure what was, And as a result, he remarried, found a mother for me, and, that worked. She raised me, and, I always felt like I was closer to my mother than I was even to my father. And then when my father passed away 10 years ago, that was the end of her relationship with me. And so
you're estranged from your the mom who brought you up.
Right,
So your
and
stepmom, but the only person you really knew is mom.
Right,
So
but
what would, like, I mean, other people that may be estranged from moms or stepmoms, would you have, what kind of advice?
or even
what kind of
even
insight
a
or
tense
advice?
relationship,
Yeah.
or a very complicated relationship that has a lot of negativity to it.
What kind of advice would you give them?
I still feel that it's my responsibility to model honor to those two women. I don't entirely know how to do that every time, but I continue to send cards, letters, gifts, try to do the things that I can. I wouldn't, because I don't have a relationship with my birth mother, I think I probably identify more with an adopted child sometimes. I didn't know the history of, what my birth was like. I didn't, because my dad never provided any of that information.
Dads usually don't know any of that stuff anyway.
And I don't think, 50 plus years ago that he was even in the delivery room. I don't even know if he was in town. And so sometimes I identify with those abandonment issues. But I've felt very definite the need to have to demonstrate honor as much. I feel like it's required of me as a woman of God to be able to demonstrate that. And I pray for them. I pray blessing on them. And I hope that my children see.
Yeah, I mean, you don't tell me every time, but I see the letters addressed to your stepmom and sister every, Mother's Day and birthday and,
Christmas
special
and-
Christmas and anniversaries and all those kinds of special days. And I know you do that, even though some of them have been returned.
I make the phone calls. They don't pick up, but
Yeah.
I still make the phone call.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot to actually dial the number, you
Yeah.
know, and but it's important that I do that. I feel like it's important. And so I think even when you have a broken relationship, I think before God, we have to try. God is a God of reconciliation, and whether reconciliation takes place on this side of earth or the other side in eternity, this is not the end of the story.
Right.
And I'm not just living for this moment, I'm living for a future. And I have people watching how I walk out these years, and so that's important to me. It's not just my children and my grandchildren, it's relationships around me that, have walked with
And
me.
I mean, you still have the promise: honor your father and mother, so your days will be long.
Unfortunately, that's not
Longevity, yeah.
conditional, right? It's not whether they
not,
love you
yeah.
back or
And you've been
whether they
honoring your
were
mom
good.
without any response for 10 years.
Yeah, well, anything that has been responded hasn't been great.
Hasn't been positive, yeah. So
Yeah, not-
you
not
said
positive.
you just mentioned earlier, I just caught, you said that your relationship to your birth mom has almost been more like an adopted relationship there, and I know there'll be some watching today, and that their relationship, they're adopted, and so either they don't know the details, like you said. How do you deal with that? How do you try to honor in that, or how do you deal with the mom in that? I know you sent a letter or note to your biological mom this last Mother's Day that was very.
It was Christmas.
Or Christmas, sorry, yeah.
Yeah,
Mother's Day is
you
today,
know,
yeah, okay.
I think it was, for me, I really felt that it was important that she know that I truly feel blessed and honored that she gave me life, and I feel like she did the best she could do. I don't know the circumstances. She was a very young mom who had lost a child, through SIDS and in a marriage that probably, she was young. I mean, she was 18 years old. I cannot imagine the trauma that probably went through her life. She'd had a child before my dad had married her. And, looking back, there's so many reasons why things probably didn't go well for her. And even when I met my other siblings, because she remarried and I met two brothers, they were like, well, I wish you'd get to know her. You wouldn't dislike her. And I said, I don't dislike her. I don't know her.
Right.
And I think sometimes we think that, we wonder why were we given up, because really my parents chose one. There was two children from that marriage, and my mother chose one and my father chose one.
So you were chosen.
Yeah, well, or else you feel like you could either
Rejected.
choose that, and the same as being an adopted child. You can think, well, these people chose to raise me and chose me as their child. But oftentimes what you think of is the people that actually rejected you, not the
Yeah,
people who
right.
made the choice. And so it has to be intentional that you actually think about the fact that you were chosen. And I realized that there was a sacrifice, the same as anybody who's giving up a child for adoption. It takes, I can't imagine having to make that decision and all of the incidentals that go into it. And I think it's important to be able to recognize that there's another story that goes along with it. I think the thing is there's unanswered questions that as you become a mother, those things become really like, oh, I didn't know what time I was born.
Right.
Silly thing doesn't really affect my future. But, you know, you
But
wonder.
it's important. It speaks to your identity in a sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, I remember, 5-6 years ago when I did meet face-to-face with my biological mother, and I have a scar on the bottom of my lip. I don't know, I've just always had it. I don't know why. Never thought to ask why. It's big. It looks like I probably just about lost my lip at one point. And she said, "Oh, I see you still have that scar." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, you might know why I have that scar." And she said, "Oh, it's the first time you saw snow and you took you started walking across out onto a step and you fell." And I thought, and there weren't places to get stitches, but I did. But it was just like, wow, somebody knows why I have that scar. And there was just something, I think it's because there's areas of your life you feel are incomplete, unanswered. And I think that in God, that's where there's too often there are a lot of areas of our life where we feel, I think I have a question I didn't know to ask.
Right.
And it was not a question, like even something as simple as that scar on my lip. I never thought about asking that question, but I realized there's somewhere inside of me, I wondered, but how often do each of us have a question inside of us about something that we've never actually articulated? We don't even really know. We don't even articulate what the question is.
Yeah.
And
It's like a part of your story's missing and you're just not sure what it is.
yeah, and I think in our lives, even as, with maturity, I realize how many times as a mother, parenting, I never knew the question to ask. And I think there were all kinds of those questions that were in me, like how to do things. And it never seemed like as a mother, like I didn't know that you were allowed to ask questions. I thought motherhood was supposed to be intuitive. And so if you had to ask questions, something was wrong with you. Meant that you weren't maternal. I'm not a real huge lover of babies. Like I love my babies and I love my grandbabies, but I don't need to hold them all the time. Like I just,
Once a month is good.
No, I don't mind holding them unless they make noise.
Then you give them to me. Then you give them to me.
Yeah, I just.
I like babies more than you do, I think.
Yeah, I love them, but even when young moms in the church, I'm happy to hold them once, but I'm happy to pass them around at the baby shower. I'm not the one in the holding the baby, hogging the baby kind of thing.
It's just not your makeup.
Yeah, but sometimes that can feel like something's wrong with you, like something.
How did that feel when we first started having kids, and and you were like, who did you ask somebody how do I be a mom?
Not that I remember, but I do remember we lived in Salmon Arm when Joel, our firstborn, was. I think we moved. How old were
he? He was like just a month or 2 months.
Yeah, he wasn't very old, and so I would say he was about 6 months old. And we were youth pastors in Salmon Arm, and I remember seeing this couple that had a son and a daughter, and they were probably 14, 15, 16, something like that. And looking at them, I loved how they interacted with each other. I liked their relationship with their parents, and I thought, I want my kids to be like that. I only had one little boy, but I remember being intentional about feeling like I wanted to see who I wanted my children to be, and getting a picture of who they would be as young adults and as adults before the first one was even a year old. And I remember intentionalizing each of the kids, like what I have to do is I have to prepare them for who they will be as grown-ups, and not that I don't even really like that they've grown up and left home. I never even really wanted summer vacation to come. I loved having my kids home.
You didn't want summer vacation to be over.
Yeah, that's what I meant. I didn't mind it, but I never remember.
There are moms who don't and dads who don't want summer vacation to come.
Yeah, I just loved having them home, but I did feel like my responsibility was to prepare them for adulthood, although I somehow or another missed the part where you're supposed to teach your sons how to wash clothes. I don't know. We had this very traditional. So, even now we have Christmas dinner, all the boys sit in the living room, all the girls in the kitchen, except for the wonderful
let's put something on the
son-in-laws.
screen,
So
caution rant coming.
I didn't prepare them in every way. It was just with my understanding, because that was my understanding of.
Yeah, no, that's true. And that's it, isn't it? You can only do what you have your own understanding. How important would you say now, kind of looking back a little bit, how important would you say having somebody you could talk to about how to mother, or just kind of something? Would that be important?
I think one of the most valuable things you could do as a young mom, or even a mom of any age mom, even moms of kids who are empty nesters, any stage, is have some people in your life, not that are going through the exact same thing as you, but a little ahead of the game, and ask them, dialogue with them. And when you make a decision, even if you don't take their advice, tell them what you decided, because it's such an honor to be included in somebody else's process. Whether when they ask you things, and even if they think, well, I'm not going to potty train my kid like that, I'm not going to bite my kid when he bites other kids. I know you did that, but or whatever it is. Tell them what you decided to do, because at least that says to them that you consider. I don't even think that you will take everybody's advice.
Right.
And I don't think you should have a multitude, not an endless supply, but.
That's called Google.
Is that, yeah, but you can find anything you want on Google.
Oh, I know. Yeah,
and it can be, and I think that God, as Christian parents, we have a responsibility to direct them to a moment of salvation, to something bigger than ourselves. And I think that that's a unique experience. I prayed my kids would have an experience with God. Yeah. And when they did, young, not even one that I'd ever had, it was such, I was so awestruck by the goodness of God that he would reveal himself to my children, that it didn't just have to be my faith, but that they could establish their own faith in a real God.
Yeah, and it's been interesting watching that develop in the different stages of their lives.
Because, we have 4 kids, 2 girls, 2 boys, all married, 12 grandchildren. Yeah. I think the fact that we had more than one boy, more than one girl, has been, I think that has really helped adding the dimensions to being able to parent and mother, because I think you could come up with some absolutes that all girls do this, all boys do that.
But they're not the same.
They're
none of the kids are
uniquely different, and yet there's moments they're so alike that it's almost frightening.
Yeah, and it's usually in frightening areas too.
Yes,
hey, let me ask you, if what would you say was your greatest or your best decision you ever made as a mom?
I think it was seeing my kids in the future, like just seeing, having a vision for the future for them, and finding people to include in my world. Right. And I became, after seeing that young, those 2 teenagers that I loved watching their family, then when we moved about a year and a half later to Vancouver Island, and we had a church of very senior adults, and their kids were grown with children, and they all grew up together, kind of like our Revelstoke location, where you're seeing like probably the similar age, and they were all they were starting to have grandchildren, and they
were our age.
Yeah. I can't imagine that. They all seem so old. Remember, we thought all we'd be doing is funerals?
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
No, that's not what's happening. And but I remember looking at their lives, because they grew up together. Like, these were like married couples who were seniors now, but and there were some that were very different. Some that their whole family was serving God, and some that none of them were. And so,
and the parent, like the moms or the dads. It was hard to tell based on the moms or the dads' personal lives, or what we could see of them anyway.
But we sat them down and asked them, what?
Because we wanted to know.
And they were willing to tell us.
Yeah.
They were. Yeah. And that was great insight, great wisdom.
It was very helpful. Wisdom. So let's come back a little bit to your experience as mom. Your biggest decision, seeing your kids forward, the greatest decision. What about your biggest regret?
I have thought about this, and I really feel like one of the things that I wish I'd known to do more was to teach my kids how to forgive. And not just, tell your sister you're sorry, give her a hug, which was kind of what happened. But watching, because I really see it in my grandkids now, the residue of what's actually in their heart a little bit more. That words alone, I mean, you can make me say it, but you can't make me mean it.
Yeah, right.
And I know as an adult having to work through insecurities, deficiencies, unforgiveness, those things that have broken us and the things that then have to be broken in us. I wish I'd known how to teach them more, how to forgive as kids
but in all
more than
fairness,
just work.
you didn't know.
No.
Because, as mother or father, your kids become who you are, not what you teach them.
I think, too, having not kind of been able to know that, I think what happens is you can enforce in your kids that they feel victimized all the time, or they see injustices all the time in their own life. The first time your kid isn't invited to somebody's birthday party, first time some kid, whacks another kid somehow or another, and you can take on that offense. It's really hard, really hard as a mom,
Especially as a mom,
parent.
Because the mom's much more nurturing.
Yeah.
Dad might say get up and go, but mom's going like, oh,
T.D. Jakes has a great message about moms, parenting adult sons that is really good, and how we still do that to our adult sons. And I do have a tendency to, think, my sons, I still wanting to mother bear them. They don't always love that,
They're getting better at rejecting it eventually.
I do think what happens is there is a sense at which there is a victim mentality, that they will see that there is themselves as a victim. And the other thing is, then they miss actually what is injustice, and what God has called them to do is to be somebody who stands in the gap for others, because they always feel like they're the ones that need some sort of defense. Right. And I don't even mean it's in a big way. It's just very subtle ways. And that would be something that, and I look at it, I see it in my grandkids. I see things that I think, oh, I wish their parents would, notice. And this is going to trip them up as adults if you don't.
The nice thing about being grandparents is you don't have to parent.
I don't have to. I just can love them, answer their texts,
Okay, we only got a couple minutes left here, but I want to just kind of just a few word answer to a couple questions. So just talking about roles of mothers at different stages of life. So what would you say really quickly to the role of a mother before you have children? Well,
you don't know before you have children that you're going to be a mother.
Would you be preparing, or yearning, or what happens if you're wanting so badly to be a mom and then
you can't conceive?
Doesn't happen? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that being unable to have children, whether that's because you're waiting for the other person to parent with, whether you just medically cannot have children. There are so many options for you to.
Today, now we have a lot more options.
Even we never, to my best of my recollection, you and I never even talked about kids before we got married. That's how bizarre it was. Like, we never.
And then once we got married, we discovered we had two different ideas about how many kids we were going to have.
I just assumed everybody had two.
And I wanted 6. So.
Yeah, that wasn't happening. But we never had a conversation. Like, to my knowledge, do you want kids? Don't you want kids? How many would you like to have?
I think we just assumed. Yeah, we assumed a lot of things.
I don't know what we thought. Yeah. But so I don't really know how you prepare, but I know that I was just with somebody recently who said, being able to open up a womb that has not, if barrenness is an issue, that's a small thing for God, that He can give you a child, whatever that looks like, and there are children that are looking for families.
Yeah, exactly.
I think,
and that's challenging. I mean, a huge shout out to adoptive parents, because
or whether they're fostering, whether they're parenting, whether they're marrying somebody who has children.
Yeah,
I mean,
stepkids, absolutely.
Those things are not easy, right?
No. It just adds so many dynamics. How about anything, like, what would you say a role of a mom is once kids have moved out? Maybe not married yet, but they've moved out of your house.
What do I think? So just the empty nesters, huh? Did they all move out at once? Well, I don't know that they all move out at once.
But what's your role once they're not in the house anymore? They're living on their own. What's your role now as mom?
You just stalk them quietly on Facebook, and you just drive by where they live and make sure they're safe. You provide baking and opportunity. I think you just, I think you keep the communication open. Unfortunately, they have to pursue you a little bit, so you can send one text, but apparently if you send too many texts and then put
You're
question
blowing
marks.
up my phone.
Yeah, and you put question marks like about 6 after the first one because they haven't answered. They don't like that.
Yeah, they talk about that when you're not around.
Yeah. But they're married, so that didn't qualify for that.
So what's your role then as a mom now to married children? Because it changes then too.
You know what? Welcoming your son-in-laws, daughter-in-laws into your life, that is a challenge. Daughter-in-laws, I think are more of a challenge than son-in-laws. And I realize
for sure, yeah.
that, my daughter-in-laws will be watching this. The women that
It's not because of the specific daughter-in-laws. It's because of the
I
relationship.
don't think it is.
It might be
I don't
because of
think
the
it is.
specific sons.
No, yes, that could be true. Like, I am grateful for the wives my sons
so
have.
good.
And
Our sons are
the
better because of
sons
their wives. Yeah.
that my son-in-laws that I have, they are wonderful. And neither of my sons would be easy. So the women that are married to them, I applaud them. But it is the women that come into your family hugely affect the family dynamics.
Yeah.
And as young moms, I encourage you strongly to pray for your spouses of your children.
for sure.
Really make that a matter and be very strategic praying for them. The people that, if you see your kids developing relationships with, not relationships that you think are great and you have a voice.
That are going in a different direction than they are. Yeah.
Yep, and their future. You don't get to do that once they're adults in the same way, not unless they ask you. But I mean, I wouldn't be encouraging relationships that are, when your kids are in their early teens, that are, those things just become hang-ups.
Yeah, they do
things.
for later on in life.
But
yeah.
you do marry the family. I do think that has a big effect on it.
So what about mom's role? Now you're grandma. Gamma, depending on who and what mood they're in. What do you feel your role specifically is? How do you play a role now in your
One of the
kids
things
and
I
grandkids'
notice
life?
you do with each of the granddaughters is you always call them beautiful.
I do.
And I really love being able just to love them and be a safe place for them to talk about the frustrations they have. I'm a verbal processor by nature. I didn't know that for a lot of years. So, of course, COVID times, you are kind of restricted who you can talk to. And so all those crazy thoughts in my mind, they sound really good in my mind. Like, I can sing really good in my mind, but I open my mouth and it's not quite as good. And so I love being able to talk to them. I said I'm not really a baby person, but I love, like, from about 2 years old on.
Yeah.
I love that age. I love being able to talk to them and have a conversation with them. Marley, who's 2, is he 3? He's 3. He spent a couple nights and, just sleepovers because Papa hasn't been there, so he's sleeping on Papa's side of the bed, and just being able to have a conversation with them. And they're fascinating. I love seeing the gifts and the callings of God on their life, even as little as 2 and 3 years old, and being able to nurture those things.
So would you say being grandma is really just being an encourager rather than a director? Like, you don't have to correct anything, you don't have to direct anything. You just you're just wonderful.
Yeah, and I do think. I think it's even encouraging their mums and their dads of the goodness that's in them and the creativity and the wonder. Like, I loved when people encouraged me in the things that were in my children. I might have seen them, or sometimes I didn't see them, and then they point them out, and I would feel like, really, that's unique? Wow, I didn't know that. And we recently had a young guy move out that was renting a room from us in Revelstoke, and we were talking about how kind and nice he was.
Just so nice,
and I said, I think our kids would have been like that if they were in somebody's home. And I believe that. Like, I think sometimes you don't realize, we think they're funny and we think they do all these great things, but having somebody else tell you how wonderful they are.
That's true.
And
Yeah.
the potential for goodness and the potential for greatness in them.
When you
I
when
think
you
is
when you love somebody else's kids, the parents feel special.
yeah, and even like the longevity of relationship, having been in Revelstoke for 30 years, we've seen so many, not just our own kids grow up and seen, like what they were like as 2 and 3 and 7 and 9, and seeing some of those characteristics and gifts and callings on their life, even when they're little. And now they're totally manifested as husbands and fathers,
Yeah,
and
it's
thinking,
cool.
this really does work. I really saw
Yeah.
this in this little person when they were little. And now I look at their children and think, you want to nurture that. That's such a gift. That's such a God thing. And that's what I feel like when I look at my grandkids. And, all those, the things that I think that I just said, oh, I wish their parents would look at that. If they don't, on the other end of it, I'm going to be there loving on my grown-up grandkids.
Yeah, you bet.
And
Yeah,
helping them process their brokenness, just like the
well,
rest
and,
of us have brokenness, right?
That's it.
It's
right.
not because their
You
parents
know.
broke them. It's
And the
just
thing is,
life does.
I think, I mean, talking about moms, I mean, there's no perfect moms, right?
No.
And I think, and we got to wrap this up, but which I've been saying now for about 8 minutes, but I think the fact that there's I think there's so much pressure on parents.
Oh.
So much pressure on moms, especially on moms. I don't hear it as much in dads, but I do hear it on moms. This pressure to do everything right, and almost the more you talk, the more moms talk to each other, the more pressure they feel.
Well, I think the internet has played a big part of that.
Yeah.
Big part. There's just so much pressure. There's just so much pressure from everything from the lunch that you make to the food that you serve to the clothes they wear.
I think, and I think something I heard when we were just young parents that really helped me a lot is this feeling like we wouldn't do a good enough job, and that our kids are going to hate us, and we're just going to do a good enough job.
Start a therapy account for them.
Yeah, forget college, start a therapy account. But I remember reading a study, whether it was a survey, I don't remember, but it was something along the lines of adult kids that had been interviewed and just said, how do you feel your parents did? And essentially it was like 80 to 90% of them said, I hope I can do as well as my parents did because I feel my parents did a good job. And that was just kind of helped me relax a little bit. And hopefully it helped other people relax that a lot of that stuff that we've read about as young parents, as young moms, a lot of it's not that big of a deal 5 years from now. And maybe if you can see yourself 5 years from now,
And
because the pressure's
I think
intense.
a lot of the things that I've, now that my kids are adults, that I've talked about things that I thought were mistakes, they don't remember those things. And some of the things I thought were really fun, like pin the nose on the
And they
clown
didn't
at a
like
birthday
it.
party. They didn't like that
They
one.
hated it, yeah.
And so, and God is good,
He is.
He's gracious,
Yeah,
and all
gracious.
those things.
That's huge.
I just wanted to, just one thing I wanted to add, being that it's Mother's Day, and talking about my moms that, which, I am grateful for being given life and being this, my birth mom has tried to connect with me now in the last few years, and she's been very gracious and patient and kind, and I'm
has.
thankful for that. I don't know how to balance adding her into my life now,
Right.
only because I don't know how to honor one and include the other. But I do have to say, I've had a wonderful mother-in-law who is very gracious, your mom. And because you're the only boy, she has no choice. I am her favorite daughter-in-law. And I have come to, I can honestly say I can count the 2 times she's made me mad in the 40 years we've been married. One was in the first 6 months we were married. And she probably doesn't even know what they are. But
I don't even know what they are.
Yeah,
so.
I could never have lived with my mother, but I have lived with your mother, and she is a wonderful, wonderful mother. And she was a great example to me. My aunties
Find an
were
example.
my grandmother.
Find an example.
Loved my grandmother. And she has probably been one of the largest influences on my life as a mother, as a grandmother.
Yeah.
And those people, look for people that you can admire.
Good.
And
It's great.
and God will provide those.
Well, why don't we just wrap up? Let's just pray for moms and everybody with moms today. Why don't you pray for babe? And just...
God, I thank you for motherhood. I thank you that it is a gift and a calling. And God, I know there is a cry in the hearts of many to be mothers. But God, I know that you can find them children to love, whether those are their own or others. God, I know that you, God, can give them, you can utilize that heart of motherhood, whether they have their own children, God, birthed out of love and relationship, or even given to them to care for and nurture. God, I pray that you would cultivate a sense of purpose in their lives, that they are stewards of these lives, whether these lives are little or big, whether they're loud or whether they're quiet. God, I pray that you would grant such a measure of wisdom to each woman as she listens, God, that she would know that, God, you will right every wrong. God, you will orchestrate the steps of that as she walks out in faith, handing her children over to you, God, just surrendering them every day, knowing, God, that you are going to love them and care for them, and you're going to bring them to a place of realization of who you are in their lives. I pray, God, that you would wipe away the shame and the guilt that just tends to clutter up our minds and our lives, God. And I pray there would just be a confidence to be able to keep going, to thrive in the role as we just progress through life. Thank you, God, for the great women of God that have stood with me, that have been in my life. I thank you, God, for your grace, for your care upon my children and my children's children. I thank you for the legacy that is made known, God, through the lives of so many men and women, God, that as they have rose up and called their mothers blessed, I pray, God, that you would bless each mom of this house, God, that they would know, God, that they have a future that is great, that you care and love for their children, and God, that you are well pleased with the job that they've done. Give them relationships that will stand with them. Give them people that will love them, support them, and encourage them in every way. I pray in Jesus' name.
Amen. Amen. Well, hey, thanks for joining us on Mother's Day. So today, if you are a mom, hope your family celebrates you. If you're not a mom, you're a woman, you are an example to somebody. Just be a godly woman. You're an example to somebody. And I just have a great Mother's Day. We do have a few things coming up, just not a lot coming up, but we do have some things coming up. Seeing this is the second Sunday of the month. Next week, the 13th, so the 16th, third Sunday of the month, which is the 16th of May, we have our monthly kids Zoom call.
Yes,
so the kids get together right after the service. We do that. And then the last Sunday of the month, we have our corporate prayer Zoom call after church. Just a time after service that we can get together, we can pray, and we can just seek God together. So we encourage you to join on that. But hey, listen, thanks for joining us. Have an incredible devil-free week, and we'll see you again next week.
Happy Mother's Day.
Happy Mother's Day.